a chosen one. Something has just been set into motion around your life, and you are standing at the edge of a moment that heaven has been preparing in silence. This is not chance. This is alignment. Anointed one. The fact that these words have found you now is a signal that what was hidden is being brought into account. There were seasons when it seemed like what was taken from you had vanished into silence, like the injustice had been absorbed without consequence. But heaven does not lose record, and heaven does not overlook what was done in secret. What felt like delay was never absence. It was precision. As it is spoken in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1, there is a time for every purpose under heaven, and the time for quiet observation is now shifting into the time of response. The balance is being adjusted. What was misaligned is being corrected. You endured without becoming bitter. You remained steady when others would have compromised. And because of that, something has been activated in your favor that cannot be reversed. If this message is speaking directly to your spirit, consider subscribing so you do not miss what is being released in your next season. Because what you are about to understand will reveal why justice is no longer delayed, it is already unfolding. Chosen one. The moment you stopped trying to prove what happened was the moment heaven began to present what was hidden. Because there is something you must understand now with absolute clarity. What felt like silence was never permission. What looked like delay was never dismissal. It was documentation. There was a record being built in a realm you could not see, and nothing you endured was overlooked, misplaced, or forgotten. You may have wondered why nothing happened immediately. Why the ones who took from you seemed to move forward without consequence. Why the systems that overlooked you continued to function as if nothing was wrong. And if we are honest, there were moments when that silence felt like confirmation that the outcome had already been decided against you. But the timing you were measuring was not the timing heaven was operating within. There is a divine order that governs justice, and it does not move according to urgency. It moves according to completion. Completion of patterns, completion of exposure, completion of truth being fully revealed without interruption. What you experienced was not random loss. It was a moment where something assigned to you was interfered with. And when something touched what carried purpose over your life, it did not remain a private matter between people. It became a matter that entered a higher court. And in that unseen place, nothing is rushed. Evidence is not guessed, it is gathered. Motives are not assumed. They are revealed, patterns are not hidden. They are allowed to unfold until there is no room left for denial. You remember the moment it happened, don't you? The shift, the realization, that quiet awareness that something had been taken. Maybe it was something you built in silence, something you shared in trust, something that carried your time, your thought, your energy. And then you watched as someone else stepped forward with it, as if your contribution never existed. Or maybe it was more subtle, a door that should have opened for you, but instead opened for someone who had access to your work. A conversation that changed direction without explanation. A relationship where your loyalty became leverage instead of value. And what made it heavier was not just the loss itself. It was the questions it left behind. Was I too open, too patient, too trusting? Those questions did not come from weakness. They came from integrity trying to understand behavior. It was never designed to carry. Anointed one, hear this carefully. What you carry is not built for manipulation. That is why it confused you. That is why it lingered. Because a clean spirit does not naturally calculate deception. It processes truth. But heaven understood something you could not see at the time. The resistance you encountered was not about your limitation. It was about your expansion. There are people who are comfortable around you when your influence is contained, when your clarity is quiet, when your vision has not yet grown beyond their reach. They can benefit from you in that space. They can access what you carry without feeling exposed by it. But the moment your vision begins to stretch, the moment your presence starts to reveal what is hidden, something shifts. Resistance appears, not because you changed, but because what you carry began to uncover what others hoped would remain unseen. This is why what you experienced was never simply competition. It was exposure. And exposure creates tension in environments built on imbalance. Because your presence alone begins to disrupt what others have normalized. Your integrity becomes a mirror. Your consistency becomes a standard. And not everyone is prepared to face that reflection. That is why some choose to take instead of build. Because building requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires the willingness to grow over time. But taking only requires access. It requires proximity to what has already been formed, and some were closer to your process than they were prepared to admit. I have seen this pattern unfold before. I have walked through moments where something I developed quietly began to take shape, only to realize that pieces of it had been carried forward without acknowledgement. On the surface, everything appeared structured, professional, even respectful. But something deeper felt unsettled. It felt like watching something familiar move forward in a space where your presence had been removed. And for a while, nothing happened. No correction, no exposure, no acknowledgement, just silence. And in that silence, there is a temptation to release it, to move on without understanding, to convince yourself that maybe it was not what you thought it was. But what I came to understand, and what you are now being shown, is this. When something is marked with purpose, it doesn't remain unresolved. It may not move immediately, but it moves with certainty. Because heaven is not reacting emotionally to what was done. Heaven is establishing order, and order requires that everything be seen clearly before it is shifted. There is a law that cannot be negotiated around. When someone interferes with what has been assigned to you, they are not entering a disagreement with you. They are entering alignment with consequence. And that alignment unfolds in time, not rushed, not chaotic, not reactive, but precise. And this is where something begins to change around your life. Not loudly, not dramatically, but unmistakably, because what happens next will not look like what you expected. It will not feel like retaliation. It will feel like movement. Subtle at first, but irreversible. And that shift has already begun. What you're beginning to notice now is not coincidence, and it is not something you created through effort. It is the result of something shifting into alignment that was already set in motion long before you could recognize it. The atmosphere around your life is adjusting, and you can feel it in ways that are difficult to explain but impossible to ignore. There is a calm where there used to be tension. There is clarity where there used to be confusion. And even though nothing dramatic has been announced, something inside you knows that the balance is changing. You may see it first in small ways. Conversations that once excluded your name now begin to include it without you asking. Opportunities that once felt blocked begin to open without resistance. People who once stood in your way quietly step aside without confrontation. It does not feel forced, and it does not feel like something you had to fight for. It feels like something has been rearranged. That is because it has. Heaven does not always correct things through noise. It often corrects through quiet repositioning. What was built on misalignment begins to weaken from within. Support systems that held certain structures together start to dissolve. And the same environment that once worked against you begins to restructure itself without your involvement. This is why what is happening feels calm instead of chaotic. It is not disorder. It is order being restored, and there is a sign you cannot overlook. The peace you feel is not emotional relief. It is confirmation. It is the signal that what is unfolding is not coming from your effort. It is coming from alignment with something higher than your control. When heaven begins to move, it does not require you to force outcomes. It requires you to remain steady while the movement completes itself. This is also why you were held back from responding in the way you once considered. There were moments when you could have spoken, exposed, defended, or corrected what happened publicly. You had enough clarity to explain the situation, enough evidence to bring attention to it, and enough reason to respond. But something restrained you. At the time, that restraint felt costly. It felt like silence was allowing the situation to continue unchecked. It felt like you were being overlooked while others moved forward using what belonged to you. But that restraint was not weakness. It was preservation, because there is something many people do not understand. When you respond prematurely, you can disrupt what heaven is preparing to establish fully. You can step into a process that was never meant to be handled through human reaction. And in doing so, you can limit the outcome to something smaller than what was already being arranged. What held you back was not fear. It was protection over the outcome, because what is unfolding now is not a simple return. It is not just about receiving back what was taken in the same form it left. It is restoration with expansion. It is restoration with increase. It is restoration that adjusts not only what you hold, but where you stand. There are positions that are opening for you now that would not have been accessible if the original situation had not unfolded the way it did. There are doors being prepared that require the version of you that was formed through that season, not the version you were before it. And that is where the deeper understanding begins. This moment is not about proving anything to anyone. It is about establishing something that cannot be interfered with again. You are not being elevated so others can see what was done. You are being positioned so what comes next cannot be manipulated the way it was before. There is a structure being set around your life now that carries stability, clarity, and authority in a way that was not present in the previous season. And the people who once misinterpreted your silence will begin to see it differently. What they thought was hesitation will be revealed as restraint. What they saw as passivity will be recognized as maturity. What they assumed was weakness will be understood as strength that was waiting for the right moment to be revealed. But there is something even more important than the outcome itself. It is how you carry what comes next, because justice is not the final step. It is the beginning of a new level of responsibility. There is a shift happening not only around you, but within you. And heaven is paying close attention to that internal movement, because what is being placed into your hands next requires more than endurance. It requires discernment. It requires clarity. It requires the ability to carry increase without allowing past patterns to return with it. You are not stepping back into what was lost. You are stepping into something that has been prepared at a higher level. And that means the way you move, the way you respond, and the way you choose will matter more than it did before. This is where many misunderstand what justice truly means. They assume it gives permission to harden. They believe that once things begin to shift in their favor, they are justified in carrying bitterness, in holding on to resentment, or in allowing pride to take root. But that is not the path of the anointed, because what heaven restores is not meant to mirror what was done to you. It is meant to establish something entirely different, and that difference begins in you. You learned how to remain steady when things were unstable. You learned how to keep your integrity when others chose shortcuts. You learned how to endure without compromising who you are. That is why you are being trusted with what is coming. Not because you were perfect through the process, but because you remained aligned when it would have been easier to shift. That kind of endurance is not common, and it is not overlooked. It is the very reason the next level of your life is being opened the way it is. But what is about to unfold will require something new from you, not survival, stewardship. And that is where the next shift becomes even more visible. There is a moment that many people overlook, and it is happening inside you right now. It is not loud, and it doesn't demand attention, but it changes everything about how you move forward. It is the moment when you stop trying to fix what was broken and begin to align with what is being built. That shift may feel subtle, but it marks the difference between striving and authority. You may have already noticed it. The need to explain yourself has begun to fade. The desire to go back and correct every misunderstanding is no longer as strong. The conversations you once replayed in your mind now feel distant, almost irrelevant. What once consumed your thoughts now passes through your awareness without taking hold of you. That is not detachment. That is healing taking its rightful place. There was a time when you carried the weight of what happened as if it was your responsibility to resolve it. You questioned your decisions, your words, your intentions. You searched for clarity in places that were never designed to give it to you, and in doing so, you exhausted yourself trying to repair something that was already out of alignment. But something changed. You reached a point where you became tired of carrying what was never yours to hold. Not in anger, not in frustration, but in clarity. A quiet realization that the situation did not require your effort to be corrected. It required your release. And when that release happened, something opened. Because there is a spiritual principle that many do not recognize. When you stop fighting what belongs to heaven, heaven gains full access to move on your behalf. As long as you are entangled in the need to control the outcome, you remain connected to the very system that limited you. But the moment you step back, the system loses its hold. That is when alignment begins. I remember reaching that place in my own life. There was a season when I spent so much energy trying to explain something that had been misunderstood. I thought that if I could just present the truth clearly enough, things would shift. But the more I tried to clarify, the more resistance I encountered. It became draining, repetitive, and unproductive. Eventually I stopped. Not because I gave up, but because I recognized that not every situation is meant to be corrected through your voice. Some things are meant to be corrected through time, through exposure, through alignment revealing what explanation cannot. And when I stopped speaking into that situation, something unexpected happened. The same people who had ignored the truth began to question what they had accepted. The same doors that had been closed began to open again without my involvement. What once felt final began to shift quietly without pressure. That is when I understood something I want you to carry with you now. When God decides to reposition you, your effort is not required to force the outcome. Your alignment is. And that is exactly what is taking place in your life now. The changes you are beginning to see are not the result of you pushing harder. They are the result of you stepping into alignment and allowing what has already been prepared to unfold. It may show up in small ways at first, a conversation that feels different, a response that carries more respect, an opportunity that appears without confusion or pressure. A situation that once felt complicated, now resolving itself without your involvement. These are not random moments. They are signals. They are indicators that the atmosphere around your name is shifting. That the narrative that once surrounded you is being rewritten without you needing to defend it. That what was misrepresented is being corrected without your voice needing to carry the weight of it. And there is another shift that is even more important. It is happening inside you. The grip that past injustice had on your mind is loosening. You are no longer reacting from the same emotional space. Situations that once triggered frustration now pass through you without controlling your response. You are thinking more clearly. You are seeing more accurately. You are moving with less urgency and more awareness. That is not coincidence. That is stability returning to your internal world. And when your internal world stabilizes, your discernment sharpens. You begin to recognize things you once overlooked. You sense patterns before they fully reveal themselves. You feel the difference between alignment and distraction without needing external confirmation. What once confused you now feels clear. That clarity is not something you created. It is something that was rebuilt. Because whenever something is taken from you in a way that impacts your spirit, it can dull your ability to trust your own perception. It can create hesitation. It can make you second-guess what you feel, what you see, what you know. But restoration does not only return what was lost externally, it restores what was affected internally. And what is being restored in you now is discernment. You are no longer operating from the same level of innocence you once had. You are operating from understanding, from experience, from awareness that has been shaped through what you endured. There was a time when you believed that staying was always the right choice, that enduring would eventually correct what was misaligned, that if you gave enough, waited long enough, and remained patient, things would shift. But you learned something deeper. You learned that faithfulness does not mean tolerating misalignment. You learned that patience does not mean permission. You learned that your presence is not meant to be consumed in environments that do not honor it. That understanding changed you, and now you move differently. You feel less need to convince people who have already chosen their perspective. You feel less pressure to negotiate your worth just to maintain peace. You are less willing to remain in places that require you to shrink in order to be accepted. That is not pride, that is authority. Authority does not announce itself loudly. It settles in quietly. It takes its place without asking for validation. It does not seek permission to exist. It simply stands. And as that authority grows within you, the dynamics around you begin to change. The access that others once had to your time, your energy, your openness begins to close, not through conflict, but through clarity. Not through reaction, but through understanding. And that shift will not always be comfortable for those who benefited from the previous version of you. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to honor what has been restored within you. Because what is being placed into your hands next will require you to protect it in ways you did not before. And that protection will not come from force. It will come from discernment. And as that discernment settles deeper within you, something else begins to loosen its grip. It is something many people carry without realizing how much it shapes their decisions. It is the quiet weight of shame. Not always obvious, not always spoken, but present in the background of how you see yourself after what happened. There were moments when a subtle question tried to attach itself to your spirit. If something was taken from you, maybe you were not enough. If someone moved ahead of you, maybe you missed something. If you were overlooked, maybe you misunderstood your own value. That voice did not come loudly, but it came consistently shaping how you interpreted the loss. But that voice is losing its authority now. Because truth is rising, and truth does not negotiate with shame. Truth corrects it. What happened to you was not a reflection of your lack. It was a revelation of misalignment around you. It showed you where your energy was being used without being honored. It showed you where your patience was being mistaken for permission. It revealed the difference between being present and being valued, and that understanding has refined you. You are not harder now, but you are clearer. You have not lost your ability to care, but you've gained the ability to protect where that care is placed. You have not closed yourself off, but you have become intentional with access. This is why heaven can trust you with what is returning, because what is coming back into your life will not require constant defense. It will require stewardship. It will require you to recognize what belongs, what aligns, and what must remain outside your space. And that shift in thinking is already happening within you. There was a time when your focus was survival. How do I protect myself from this happening again? How do I avoid repeating the same experience? How do I make sure I am not placed in the same position? But now, your thinking is changing. You are no longer focused on protection alone. You are beginning to think in terms of responsibility. What am I meant to carry? What requires my attention? What deserves my time and energy moving forward? That shift changes everything, because when you move from survival into stewardship, you no longer react to what appears. You choose what aligns. You no longer chase every opportunity. You recognize what belongs to you without forcing it, and that recognition is what will protect what is being restored. Every moment you resisted bitterness, every time you chose restraint instead of retaliation, every night you processed what happened without allowing it to change your character, those were not empty moments. They were investments. They were forming the foundation for what you are about to receive. And now, those investments are beginning to return. Not always in dramatic ways. Not always in ways that draw attention. Sometimes the first signs of restoration are quiet. Stability replacing chaos, consistency replacing unpredictability, a sense of calm where there used to be constant tension. You wake up and realize you are no longer bracing for loss. That is not a small thing. That is evidence that the environment around your life is no longer operating under the same conditions. And as this continues to unfold, there is something heaven is asking you to release completely. It is the fear of hoping again. Because when something has been taken from you once, the heart learns to guard itself. Even when new opportunities begin to appear, there is a quiet hesitation, a subtle caution that says, do not trust this too quickly. Be careful. This could be taken again. That response is understandable, but it cannot remain. Because guarding your wisdom is not the same as closing your heart. You are not being asked to return to the same level of openness without awareness. You're being asked to move forward with discernment that allows you to remain open without being unprotected. And that is a different posture. It is not driven by fear. It is guided by clarity. You may begin to notice that opportunities now feel different from what you experienced before. There is less pressure, less urgency, less confusion surrounding the decision. In the past, things may have felt rushed, as if you needed to act quickly before the opportunity disappeared. But what is aligned does not rush you. What belongs to you does not require you to compromise who you are to access it. Peace will be present. Clarity will be present. And when something is truly ordered for your life, it will not create internal conflict. It will confirm alignment. This is one of the clearest indicators that the atmosphere has changed. You are no longer operating in environments that require manipulation to succeed. You are stepping into spaces where your integrity can remain intact. And even your relationship with prayer is shifting. There was a time when your prayers were focused on fixing what was broken, asking for situations to be corrected, for relationships to be restored, for things to return to what they were before. But now something deeper is happening. You're no longer asking for everything to be fixed. You're asking for things to be ordered. And that is a higher level of authority. Because fixing implies something is damaged beyond recognition. Ordering recognizes that alignment determines outcome. And the truth is, You were never broken in the way the situation tried to make you believe. You were being repositioned. That is why some doors will not reopen. That is why some relationships will not return in the form they once held. It is not because you lost something valuable. It is because what was there could not support what you are becoming, and real restoration does not bring you back into what caused the loss. It moves you into something where the same loss cannot happen again. This is protection at a higher level, and as this understanding deepens, you will begin to feel something you have not felt in a long time. Safety. Not the kind that comes from controlling everything around you, but the kind that comes from trusting what is within you, because what has been rebuilt inside you is stronger than what was taken from you, and that strength is what will carry you into what is next. And as that sense of safety settles into your spirit, something begins to rise that could not fully exist while you were still in survival mode. It is not loud, and it does not demand attention, but it changes how you think, how you create, and how you move forward. It is the return of clarity in your vision. For a long time, your focus was shaped by defense. You were watching closely, thinking carefully, measuring every step, because you had already experienced what it felt like to lose something you did not expect to lose. That kind of pressure narrows your perspective. It keeps your attention fixed on what could go wrong instead of what is being prepared to go right. But that pressure is lifting now. And as it lifts, something begins to open within you. Ideas start to surface again. Direction begins to feel clearer. You find yourself thinking about what is possible instead of what needs to be avoided. That shift may feel simple, but it is powerful, because creativity cannot thrive where fear is leading. And what you are beginning to experience is not just mental clarity. It is alignment, creating space for what was already placed inside you to rise again. Thoughts that once felt distant now return with strength. Solutions that once seemed out of reach begin to form naturally. You may notice inspiration arriving in unexpected moments, without effort, without strain. That is a sign. It means the atmosphere around your life is no longer restricting your movement. It is supporting it. And as that happens, you may also notice a change in how people respond to you. There will be those who begin to seek your perspective, those who observe how you remain steady through seasons that would have unsettled many. They may not understand everything you went through, but they will recognize something different in how you carry yourself now. That difference is not something you need to explain. It speaks for itself. There is a quiet authority in stability. There is influence in consistency. When someone moves through difficulty without becoming bitter, without losing clarity, without abandoning integrity, it creates a presence that others cannot easily ignore. Your life begins to communicate something without words, and that is part of what is being restored as well. Not just opportunity, not just position, but influence that is rooted in who you have become through the process. At the same time, there is something else that is being released from you, the weight of resentment. It may not have always been obvious, but carrying what happened required energy. Remembering it, processing it, trying to understand it, holding on to it in ways that kept it active in your mind. That weight cannot move forward with you into what is being prepared, and you are beginning to feel that release. Not because what happened was acceptable, but because it is no longer necessary for your future. The road ahead requires space, and resentment takes up space that must be cleared. You are not being asked to forget. You are being freed from carrying it, because what lies ahead of you requires lightness, clarity, and the ability to move without being pulled back by what no longer belongs. And as you continue stepping forward, your understanding of success itself begins to change. There was a time when success may have been connected to proving something, showing that you could overcome what was said, what was done, what was taken, demonstrating that you were capable despite the circumstances. But that perspective is shifting. Success is no longer about proving, it is about sustaining. It is about building something that aligns with who you are now, something that carries peace, not pressure, something that reflects clarity, not confusion, something that grows without requiring you to compromise your integrity to maintain it. That is a different kind of success. It is not driven by comparison. It is not measured by how quickly things happen. It is defined by alignment between what you carry and what you build, and that alignment is what you are beginning to feel. You may notice a quiet pull toward new environments, new ideas, new directions that reflect this change. It may not always come with clear explanations, but it will feel consistent. It will feel like a natural movement forward rather than a forced decision. That is not confusion. That is direction. And following that direction may require you to leave certain things behind. Not with conflict, not with resistance, but with clarity. Some routines, some relationships, some patterns that once felt normal may no longer align with where you're going. That is not loss, that is transition, because what is ahead of you cannot be built on what no longer fits who you have become. And as you move through this, something unexpected may begin to rise within you. Gratitude. Not for the pain itself, but for what it produced, for the strength that was formed, for the clarity that was developed, for the discernment that now guides your decisions. You begin to see that what once felt like wasted time was actually preparation, that what felt like delay was building something within you that could not have been formed any other way. And that realization changes how you carry the future. You are no longer walking forward empty-handed. You are walking forward with understanding, with awareness, with a level of clarity that cannot be easily shaken. And that combination is what makes what comes next sustainable. You are not stepping into this new season alone. You are stepping into it equipped. And that is why what you build now will not look like what was lost. It will be stronger. It will be clearer, it will be aligned, and most importantly, it will remain. But there is still one more layer to this process that must be understood. Because what is being restored to you is not only something you will receive, it is something you will have to choose. Because when restoration begins to return to your life, it does not arrive in isolation. It draws attention, it creates movement, it shifts how people see you, how opportunities find you, and how access begins to open around you. And this is where discernment becomes more important than ever before. You may start to notice it in subtle ways. People who once overlooked you begin to show interest again. Conversations that never included your name begin to circle back. Opportunities that once felt distant now appear within reach. At first, it can feel affirming, even surprising, because it reflects a change you waited a long time to see. But not everything that returns is meant to remain. This is where many lose what was restored. Not because they were not chosen for it, but because they did not recognize what aligned with it. Restoration is not only about receiving, it is about selecting. Who has access to your time now that your time carries more value? Who hears your ideas before they are fully formed? Who stands close enough to influence what you are building? These choices may seem small, but they determine whether what is returning will remain stable or become vulnerable again. Chosen one, you are no longer in a season where you can move without awareness. You have been given clarity for a reason. There was a time when you allowed access based on familiarity, based on history, based on the assumption that consistency in presence meant alignment in purpose. But you have seen what happens when access is not matched with integrity. That lesson was not meant to make you closed. It was meant to make you intentional. You are not required to give the same access to everyone who once had it. You are not required to return to the same dynamics simply because they are familiar. You are allowed to choose differently now, and that choice is part of your restoration. Because what heaven is placing into your life will attract attention, and not all attention is aligned with your assignment. Some will be drawn to the outcome without understanding the process. Some will want proximity to what is being built without carrying the responsibility that comes with it. And your discernment will recognize that. Trust it. Do not override what you sense simply to maintain comfort or avoid discomfort. What you feel now is clearer than it has ever been. That clarity was rebuilt through experience, and it is meant to guide you forward. At the same time, there may be moments when emotions from the past rise unexpectedly. Even as things begin to align, you may feel a sense of grief for what was lost, for how it happened, for what it took from you in that season. That doesn't mean you are moving backward. It means you are human. Healing doesn't erase memory, it transforms its influence. You can remember without being controlled. You can acknowledge without being pulled back into what was. Allow those moments to pass through you without attaching meaning to them beyond what they are. They are part of the process of release. What matters is that they do not shape how you receive what is coming next. Because you're no longer operating from scarcity. There was a time when it felt like you had to chase every opportunity, like nothing was guaranteed, and anything that appeared had to be held onto quickly before it disappeared. That mindset created pressure. It created urgency. It made every decision feel critical. But that is not the season you are in now. What belongs to you will align with you. It will not require you to compete for it. It will not require you to exhaust yourself to maintain it. It will not force you into positions that compromise your values. That is how you will recognize it. Peace will accompany it. You may begin to feel that peace in ways that extend beyond your circumstances. Your body feels calmer. Your thoughts are less reactive. Situations that once would have triggered tension now pass through your awareness without controlling you. That is not numbness. That is safety returning to your spirit. And real safety is not built through control. It is built through trust. Trust in what has been restored within you. Trust in the discernment that now guides your choices. Trust in the alignment that is unfolding around you. Even your prayers are reflecting this shift. You may notice they're no longer filled with urgency. You are not asking for immediate solutions the way you once did. Instead, there is a quiet attentiveness, a willingness to listen, a desire for direction rather than just resolution. That is growth. Because listening positions you to receive wisdom, and wisdom sustains what breakthrough alone cannot. Chosen one. You are not the same person who entered that season of loss. You carry a different awareness now, a deeper understanding of alignment, a stronger connection to your own discernment, a clearer sense of what belongs in your life and what does not. That transformation is what makes what is returning sustainable. Do not rush this season. Do not test it by forcing outcomes or trying to accelerate what is already being arranged with precision. There is a timing to what is unfolding, and that timing is not working against you. It is working for you. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you are meant to be in this moment. And the steadiness you feel within you now is not temporary. It is the foundation for everything that is about to take form in your life. But as this foundation settles, there is still something deeper forming beneath the surface, something that will define how you carry what comes next. What is forming beneath the surface now is not something the world will immediately recognize, but you will feel it every time you make a decision, every time you move without hesitation, every time you remain steady where you once would have reacted. It is a quiet confidence, and it is built from something far deeper than success or recognition. It is built from survival without compromise. You did not just come through a difficult season, you came through it without losing who you are. And that matters more than you may fully understand right now, because what is ahead of you will require stability that cannot be shaken by external movement. It will require you to remain grounded even as things begin to expand around you. Many people think increase is about gaining more resources, more influence, more opportunity. But what heaven calls increase is different. It is flow. It is the ability for ideas, opportunities, connections, and provision to move through your life without being blocked, without being distorted, without being lost. And for that flow to remain, the vessel carrying it must be prepared. That is why the season you went through required pruning. There were things removed from your life that did not make sense at the time, connections that ended, opportunities that shifted, paths that closed without explanation. It felt like loss, and in many ways it was. But it was not punishment. It was preparation. Because without that pruning, what is coming would not have remained stable. It would have been exposed to the same patterns that once disrupted your progress. It would have been vulnerable to the same dynamics that took from you before. But now something is different. You are different. You may have already noticed how your reactions have changed. Situations that once would have pulled strong emotion from you now pass without the same intensity. Conversations that once required your energy now feel distant. The past still exists, but it no longer controls your response to the present. That is healing. And that healing is what allows authority to express itself naturally within you. Not through force, not through explanation, but through clarity. You no longer need to overanalyze everything. You no longer need to question every step. You begin to sense alignment without needing constant confirmation. You recognize what belongs in your life and what does not, with a level of certainty that feels new but grounded. And with that clarity comes freedom. You are no longer obligated to maintain access for those who only valued you when you were convenient. You are no longer required to explain your decisions to those who did not protect you when they had the opportunity. You're no longer tied to environments that do not honor your growth. That does not mean you move with anger. It means you move with understanding. You are allowed to step forward quietly. You are allowed to choose differently. You are allowed to build without announcing every step to those who misunderstood your last one, because what you are building now is not meant to be consumed all at once. It is meant to be stewarded, and that is why patience is returning to you in a different way. Not the kind of patience that comes from fear of losing something, but the kind that comes from trust in what cannot be taken from you. Fear rushes. It pushes you to act quickly to secure what appears before it disappears. But trust allows you to wait. It allows you to observe. It allows you to choose with clarity instead of urgency. You may also feel something shifting in how you relate to time. The pressure to catch up with others is fading. The need to measure your progress against someone else's timeline is losing its hold. You are no longer defining your value by how quickly things happen. You are recognizing alignment by the peace that accompanies it. And that peace is guiding you. It is leading you into a place where everything begins to move with a different rhythm, not rushed, not forced, but steady. In that steadiness, something else begins to return. Creativity. For a long time, your mind was occupied with defense, watching, adjusting, preparing for what could go wrong. That kind of pressure limits vision. It narrows your ability to see beyond the immediate moment. But now that pressure is releasing, and as it does, new ideas begin to surface. Direction becomes clearer. Possibilities appear without strain. You find yourself thinking about what can be built instead of what must be avoided. That is restoration. And as this continues, your presence will begin to carry something others can feel, even if they cannot explain it. People will notice how you move, how you respond, how you remain steady. They will sense that something deeper is guiding your life, not because you speak about it, but because you carry it. There is authority in calmness. There is influence in consistency. And what you carry now has been shaped through experience that cannot be replicated quickly. That is why what you build next will last. You are not stepping into this season empty. You are stepping into it with discernment that has been sharpened, with clarity that has been tested, with a faith that has moved beyond theory into experience. That combination is rare, and it is powerful. As you continue forward, your definition of success will continue to evolve. It will no longer be about proving anything to anyone. It will be about sustaining what aligns with who you are now. It will be about building something that carries peace, stability, and purpose. And that purpose will guide you into spaces that support your growth instead of competing with it. You may feel drawn toward new environments, new collaborations, new directions that reflect this change. Follow that pull. It is not confusion, it is alignment guiding you into what has been prepared. And as you walk into it, gratitude will begin to rise within you, not for what you lost, but for what you gained through it, for the clarity, for the strength, for the understanding that now shapes every decision you make, because now you can see what that season was doing. It was refining you, it was preparing you, it was aligning you. You're not walking into this future alone, you're walking with everything that was formed within you along the way. Take a moment and feel the steadiness that now exists in your spirit, the absence of urgency, the presence of clarity, the quiet confidence that no longer needs to be proven. This is not temporary, this is foundation, and what is being built on that foundation will not be easily shaken. Chosen one, the accounting has already begun, the balance is being restored, and what is moving toward you now is not only what was taken, but what was prepared because you endured. Chosen one, take a steady breath and feel what has already shifted within you, because what you sense is not uncertainty. It is alignment settling into place. What once felt delayed is no longer waiting. It is moving with quiet precision, and you are standing in a moment heaven prepared long before you could see it. Anointed one. This is your Kairos moment, the intersection where divine timing meets your life with intention. What was hidden is being revealed, what was withheld is being reassigned, and what was taken is now being accounted for under a higher authority. You are not chasing restoration, you are receiving what has already been set in motion for you. Walk forward with peace. Do not rush what is unfolding. Let your steps be guided by clarity, not pressure, and let gratitude anchor you as each door opens in its appointed time. The same God who saw your endurance has already established what comes next. If this word has confirmed something in your spirit, write Amen or 777 in the comments as a sign of agreement with what is being aligned in your life. And if you feel led, subscribe so you do not miss the messages prepared for your journey, and support this mission if it speaks to your heart. Go in peace, chosen one. What was accounted is now being restored.